Hello and welcome back to the LAMDA log. This is Ian Austin. Week 2, day 3, Wednesday, the 13th of May, 2026. Good morning, good evening, good night, good time of day to you. So we started off with some auditions. So what we're doing in this class is weekly we'll have some guest, if it's a faculty member, an industry professional, whoever it may be, comes on the panel with Ollie, and we are given a certain audition to work on and to prepare. And then we go, and everyone has a time slot throughout the day. We have 2 blocks, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. And we, for this day, just since it was our first one, we sat in for everyone's audition. But in the future, it'll be individual. You'll go in for yours, and then you'll stay for the next one so you can read. But it's just, some audition practice, and then we'll get our feedback. So our special guest was Joe Kloska, who is an RSC performer. He was just most recently in The Winter's Tale playing Leontes in The Winter's Tale. Is that right? Yes, in The Winter's Tale. And so he ran the audition, and Ollie was just there as like support. So the first session I was just watching, and in the afternoon I had my audition. It was the very last one. Yeah, so the first person who went first, he had a little interview first, and some of the questions that were asked is, what did you think about the play? He then did his first attempt and was redirected and went again, focusing on kind of Isabella's religious obligations. So this person read for Isabella, and we were doing a scene. I should have started with this. We were doing a scene from Measure for Measure, when Isabella comes to approach her brother Claudio in prison to tell him that the Duke or whoever said, "Hey, if you sleep with me, I'll let your brother live." But she was going to go into a convent and become a nun, and so her sexual purity and her chastity was super important to her. And her brother is in prison for getting his girlfriend, his fiance, pregnant, and because he had sex before marriage, he was going to be put to death. So, big scene. And then he's like, what if it's not that bad and you did it to save my life? And she's like, how dare you ask me to do that? Yeah, so they only went through the first half and of the second time, and it seems to be a good process. Enjoyed it. The next person went, and they also were Isabella. And some questions of, what did you make with her journey in the play? Like, what did you think about it? And is any part of her tempted to take the deal and save her brother's life? We're kind of starting in the middle of this interaction, so that's important to think. And then make sure to read the whole play beforehand. I'd seen this in the late summer, early fall, when the school did it. So I was familiar with the story, but I did not reread it, and I wish I had, just to do my work. I don't think it changed. I don't know. That could have changed my performance. The second question was like, when does the penny drop? When is the moment that Isabella realizes, oh, he's asking me to do this? And how do you show that shift? And then another person went and he played Claudio. And it's the questions were, who are you playing? How do you feel? Getting home to pregnant wife is very important. And then his redirect was to turn up the physical, chained to a wall, abused and heavy, and just had a really bad time. It seems like this rich, privileged kid who had never had a hard night in his life, and now he's been in prison for a few days. And then there was a caesura, which is a full stop, a period, exclamation mark, question mark, in the middle of the line. And so when he says yes, has he affections in him that for the I've already forgotten it, that thus can make him bite the law by the nose when he would force it? Sure, it is no sin, or of the deadly seven it is the least. So that's kind of the moment where Claudio goes from like, no, thou shalt not do it, don't do what he says, and then it's like, yes. She says, prepare for your death, and he's like, yes. But has he affections in him that thus can make him bite the law by the nose when he would force it, right? That he can mock the law when he would enforce it? If that's true, then no, there's no way it's a sin. Or if it is one of the deadly sins, it's the least one, right? And so really explore that to zero. Where is the thought process? What justifies that? And then the next person went and played Isabella. I thought she was brilliant. She wasn't marked as one of like the ones that he considered at the end, because we got our feedback at the end of the week, or yeah, it was at the end of the week, and he had some considerations there, but this one wasn't, and she was my favorite. But questions were, what is she going for? What is going on for her, like right now? Like, what is going on for the character, I think. And then really ask those questions and plead for answers. And then another girl went up as Isabella. And what's her relationship with Shakespeare? And was she familiar with the play? Bring in total faith and adoration of God. And then in the redirect, just managed to name the thing, right? She wouldn't even say it at the beginning. She says, like, the thing that I abhor to name will leave me, like that. And then she, like, how did she get to that point? Kind of exploring that journey a little more. And then the next guy went and he played Claudio. And what take on Claudio before the play begins? And then Claudio is an upper class. What's his relationship with Isabella, and how does he feel about the nunnery? And it seemed like Joe's feeling was that the nunnery was that, like, he didn't support that. He didn't really believe in God, and he was kind of this uppity, like kind of a jock, like frat boy kind of vibe. And then he had him be restrained also, like to play against the restraints and turn up the restraints and play that obstacle. Build a speech about the death into sweet sister, let me live. What sin you do to save a brother's life, nature dispenses with the deed so far that it becomes a virtue. Got some things in my head. We'll get there. Then another one went and played Claudio, and relation with the text and character was his questions, and then his redirect was to up the argument with Isabella to convince her, right? That's his objective. It's really to convince her. Then another one went up, and the last person went up and brought their script and used it a couple times. And I respected that because there was no like trying to fake it or trying to lie or deceive in a sense. It's like, I'm more prepared than I thought, because some other people went up later who didn't have it locked in, and I was like, no, it wasn't quite there. But yeah, so she was asked to explore the stakes and the relationship with Isabella. It's a dangerous situation, must play into that danger, ask the question and see if he has an answer, right? Be genuine in those questions. Then we had 18th century dance with Matthew Warrenham. And then James Michelos was there to accompany us with live music, which was delightful. And the whole kind of what we're focused on is English country dances. And they're not called country because they were done out in the country. They're called country because, like, people think maybe contra and that you're facing each other. So we circled up, we did some introductions, right? Names, pronouns, expectations, and experience with country, with this kind of dance. And I was able to say, like, oh, I did the Nauvoo pageant, and we did a country dance for each one of the countries in the UK, which was delightful. And then waltz came from 18th century, right? And these are like the people's dance is what they did. And the waltz came from the Industrial Revolution, and that was partnered, but focused on partner, not community, and that was later. So we did the farandole, which is a kind of like a line dance where you what we did is everybody kind of like scattered about in the space, and then let me move this, scattered about in the space, and then one person would take you by the hand, and then you would go into the dance, and then when you pass by somebody, you would take their hand, and then the idea was just you would follow whatever path that the person went. And it was like, oh, I'm going around. And then we eventually did this little spiral because we had two lines, and then they spiraled each other, and then we put the arms over, and so we like, I don't even know how to explain it exactly, but it was delightful. It was so wholesome and fun and simple. It was called the snail, that little circle, and then you peel out of it somehow. Yeah. Um, oh, we also had a warm up before that where we really focused on feeling our feet and finding our center of gravity, like how far to one side can I go before I fall, and all the ways around. And then we followed the motion of the music, and we walked leading our body. We played with the idea of walking is truly finding that perfect balance between like falling forward but like catching yourself each time. Because if you are walking but you're leading too far, then you're like constantly catching yourself. And we played with that a little bit. But if you're going this way and you're like leaning back out of it, then it's not. But like good purposeful movement has that forward momentum, and you're just following it, and you're centered, and it's nice. Um, yeah, we did it, and it was delightful. Then we had combat, and we are doing saber work, and we're gonna do this quick like 30-minute, 30-second, not minute, 30-second choreo. So I paired up, and right, remember that I gotta put this down. Um, with saber, right? Your thumb is back here, and then this is covered, and you lead with your thumb. And it was designed to be on horseback, so you have this wide stance. And so how we start is with a lunge, and you don't want to come over here and start lunging like that. You want to keep this wide stance even when, because it would have been on horse. So I'm gonna feign one. Well, it's like a 5, right? Because first we went over all the blocks again, right? 1, and you always want the sharp edge of your sword out, right? Because the side is brittle, or the side would bend and the back would break or something. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, sloping 5, 6, sloping 6. Those are them. So I go for a 5 and then into a 3. 4 to a 4. So bum bum. And then I don't remember. And then she defends ba ba. And then I go here. And then she blocks that. Well, I was she, he, whomever my partner is. And then it's a double attack. It's there. And I think that's the whole thing. It was just a few moves. So it was bum, 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 bum. And then with the retreat, make sure you lead like so you want to lock out that back leg straight for the attacks and the lunge. And then when you're going back, you want to like kick your back foot. It's kind of like this little frog step. That's what we did. We also did this combat warm up that I was trying to remember. It had some punching and things. You punched, and then you blocked it. Then you put your arm down, and then you punched, and then you blocked it, and then you put it down, and then you're doing this. Ba 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 ba. Then we did this other one that was like locking it in here. You lock it, you bring it down, you punch, they lock it. Something like that. Anyway, it was a fun little martial arts warm up. And after that, I believe we had lunch. But I did not write lunch. No, wait, was it third class? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so there's going to be 27 moves in this thing, in this little module. 5 modules is for the advanced certification, which I should do because I got approved for fight night. I'll do my first practice this coming Monday because there's some scheduling things. The 28th of June is our exam. It's on the Sainsbury stage. Choreo is only going to be about 30 seconds long. It is all currently up on Canvas, and it's a refresher. And then we refreshed and went into it. And then we had lunch, and then we had voice to text with Jeremy Finch, and he is lovely. We reviewed our scheme of work, which is like the syllabus. What would we like to get out of this class? I want to be able to plan and meet my prepared breaths. I think what I meant by that is like in a text, like where am I going to breathe and kind of do that. So it's specific and it's not just when I need to breathe, but it kind of works with it a little more. Then an ability to pick up something on in breath and drop it on out breath. We did this activity, focus on the out breath and the respiratory pause, yielding to the in breath. And then I do not know what that says. Public. Oh, we did. We rubbed our skin and then we stretched to begin, just gotten comfortable with our bodies. I also want to work on increasing my awareness. I feel like I thought I was a very aware person, but maybe not as much as I had hoped. And I've been learning that. And then we laid down and we focused on our breath, and we put our hand in front of our mouth to breathe out the breath as a bilabial fricative, so like a B, but if it were a fricative. That's not a sound that we have in English, but and then honestly, I was struggling. I started falling asleep. But we went into like something, and then we went into text, and we got out an excerpt from Oedipus, Act 1, opening speech, and we read the section by section and then we only vocalized the vowels, and then we started with an H. So hi, like if I were to only vocalize vowels, so say that phrase, ho he ho ha hi he ha ho, only vocalized vowels. Yeah. Then we went into our audition round 2, and back with Ollie and Joe. And so the first person went, and she did Isabella and asked about experience with Shakespeare and with this specific role. And then then the redirect for her was imagine that time is an art, that there's a crucifix on the wall, and that had to keep referring back to it and make sure that God can hear you be righteous, and keep um, checking that you're doing the things right. And well, and then what was it like to have God so present in that? And it was a very different perspective of God than the one I share. It was a very vigilant and oppressive God. Anyway, and then another person played Isabella, and was reminded not to implement other people's notes, but just to take one each by itself. And then he wanted her to make her sharper and shinier, like a knife that she's cutting through these arguments. And that he's really interested in her binaries, the black and whiteness of her beliefs. And then choose your punishments with specificity and clarity. And someone else went, and he played Claudio, and he called for a line at one point, which also at lunch, I ran this a bunch. I'll get to it. But in the redirect, he at the beginning he was just like, "What is your opinion of Claudio?" And then with his redirect, he said, "Why does he choose these metaphors?" And very he sees Claudio as being very rich and privileged, and wants to escape. And then another woman did Isabella. And then the beginning questions is, what is Shakespeare to you, and what role would you like to play? And then on the redirect was told to explore her higher status based on the relationship with God, and to accuse him and don't make him feel better. And then another woman went and asked about experience with Shakespeare and dream roles, and redirect was to push the pre-switch that everything will be okay. It's really great. And then when he's like, sure it is no sin, it's like, what? Right? And then another guy went and he had the same questions as everybody else. And in the redirect, he was asked to be on her side, use it to deceive her when finally asking her to, right? Really lean into the beginning. Free in the cell and explore the physical pain of imprisonment. And then I went and I felt dropped in emotionally, but I think it came off as self-indulgent. And I was really focused on the fear of this hell, right? This horrible things. As he goes into the monologue about all these terrible things, he says, "I but to die and go we know not where, to lie in cold corruption and to rot, the sensible warm motion to become a kneaded clod, and the delighted spirit to bathe in floods of fire, or to reside in thrilling region of thick ribbed ice, to be imprisoned in the restless winds and blown with the viewless winds and blown with restless violence round about the pendant world, or to be worse than worst of those that lawless and uncertain imagine howling. 'Tis too horrible." So it's just all these different ideas of what it would mean to be damned to hell, and what is this hell. Um, and so I was really putting myself in that situation, and I cried, which is something I take pride in, but I don't think is always what's wanted. And his redirect for me was to really use my words, to not pity myself and focus on myself, but to really convince her. And then I fumbled on some of the words at first because I was so in it emotionally. My lines got better my second time, but then I think I wasn't as specific. So I'm gonna try to do better this time. And then our last one was acting through song, and we will have an audition styled final assessment at the end of this term that will be 1 to 2 minutes, 16-ish bars. For each two contrasting songs, it's very important that you like the songs you sing. Never sing a song you don't like for an audition, unless it's specifically asked. For range, do not lie, right? Somebody asked about, like, what do you put for range? Because if you can't deliver, you will be dead to that team, right? So the first woman went and she sang Mira from Carnival, and notes were like she didn't feel the joy of the excitement of being in this carnival, and it felt a little careful and generalized. And so there's a hunger to find this new place, and what does she really want, and then really heighten the choices, um, and show the insecurity there. And then 4 people were asked to be specific, like carnival members that who she was talking to. And one was a cotton candy man named Paul, and then a clown, and a bearded lady named Jane, and a tightrope walker. And she explained how she felt about each one of them before she went back in the song. And then I did Grow for Me from Little Shop, and I got my binder and I drew a little picture of the plant wilted, and I put it on 2 blocks, and I went for it. I was like, I'm gonna put my heart into this class this time. And I went around, and it was demonstrative. It was, I don't know, I struggle a little bit because it felt fun and it felt entertaining and it felt truthful to the given circumstances that I had done. But they thought it was too showy, too demonstrative, too whatever. And so they asked me, they said it's a love song. And I had someone came up and acted as the plant. And I just, sat next to her and sang to her, which is great. But I push back a little bit. Like, how do you deal with that, when style requires something else? But and then another person sang a great song called "Ahead of My Time" by Peter Mills. That's about a caveman who doesn't want to like pick a mate, and he's like, it's a great campy fun song. I really enjoyed it. And then he practiced with the accompaniment, but not the piano, so it felt a little different. Um, oh, also, my next song that they gave me was something to challenge me. They said I could do grow for me. I could play Seymour right now, but they said do Goodbye from Catch Me If You Can. I was like, I love that song. I sang it in my warm up that morning, which I didn't even mention. But yeah, I warmed up, got to school early, and all that. And then when your intention is specific and locked in, his rhythm was too. When his intention was clear, so was the stuff. And we were struggling on like who would all perform. So one more guy went up and he sang "Patience" by Take That, because he wanted to explore like singing a pop song and finding action in that. And he sang to an individual. And he was still leaning into a darker, kind of more classical sound. He's got a master's in opera performance. And so we need to have different filters to play with. And whenever you're doing that, it's all in the placement, is all jaw, lips, and tongue, and larynx position. But the jaw forward is darker. The jaw, right? The lips flatter is brighter. Right. And then the tongue, like an E sound, is bright. Right? To darker. And so if you play with all those, you can find different sounds. And that was Wednesday. It was a grand day. Enjoyed it thoroughly. But I hope you all have a good day. And we'll see if I can finish the next day. Anyway, love you lots. Bye.